Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Always good to be here with you on a Wednesday morning. I can't complain.
Excellent. And what's your spiritual energy number coming in this morning?
Operating at a 10, and I didn't have to fool around with the gauge. It just was there for me, so I didn't have to hit like the spiritual energy increase button or anything like that. It was just available. Yesterday it wouldn't have been the case, but today it is.
Well, that's great to hear. I join you as a 10 myself. And what's your gratitude moment this morning?
So I'm grateful for my ordinary but still important gratitude for indoor plumbing, available clean drinking water, refrigerator with fresh food in it, and access to more food at a supermarket. I'm grateful for the opportunity this past long weekend. I have an annual gathering with some friends who have performed enacted vision quests in the last 25 years. We get together once a year, and I was able to go and be with them for 2.5 days. The only thing I didn't like about that is the driving, but I have a car that works. I have highways that are paved. So again, all that is in perspective. And then I'm grateful for having those friends, and I'm grateful for having generally good health. And as you and I like to say, as far as I can tell, my mind still seems to be working reasonably well. So I'm grateful for all of that.
So how many of your friends do you all get together? How many of you all together?
This year it was 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you get together in one location for the vision quest?
Yeah, well, we don't do a vision quest. All of us have done a vision quest somewhere in the 1980s, 90s, early 2000s, but there used to be about 55 or plus. At the first time we had a gathering of Vision Quest alumni, I guess you could call it, was at a retreat center in Virginia in the year 2000. And we did it 2 different retreat centers down there through about 2008. And the enrollment began to diminish. So one guy opened up his home, and we could probably jam 15 people in, but after that it would be a little bit messy. One guy actually camped this past weekend. But yeah, so it's a nice house. There's plenty of space. I bring an air mattress. There aren't enough beds for all 13 people, but there's enough space for air mattresses and cots and things. And we just sit. We sit and counsel together. We take turns preparing meals, so we eat really well. On Saturday mornings, another guy and I make omelets, individual omelets for everybody. That's the only individually prepared meal. But everybody who comes prepares great meals, lunch, dinner, breakfast. And we just go out and we walk on the land, and we engage in deep conversation, and just catch up on each other's lives, really. Because, again, we've known each other, most of us, for the better part of 25 years now. So it's a retreat / reunion / feast.
You've been doing this for 25 years?
Yeah, the first gathering was down at a place called Rose River Retreat Center, I think. It wasn't a very accommodating retreat center. Somewhere in Virginia, I forget the town it was in. And after that, we went to a place called Seven Oaks, which I think was outside of Madison, Virginia. And we were there for probably 6 or 7 years. But then we didn't have a big enough group anymore to justify going to a place like that. So we went to a couple of other smaller places and eventually ended up at this guy's house.
And what's the distance from your house?
This year, each time I move in Connecticut, it changes. This year, each way is about 275 miles.
Wow, that is a drive.
And I'm the third furthest. There's one woman comes up from North Carolina. Her husband drives her up, and another guy who's in Ohio, but he actually flew into Baltimore this time because the drive for him is over 10 hours each way. So,
okay,
yeah,
sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel refreshed? Do you feel more in tune, in line with your purpose and things as a result of that?
I feel more, I think, yeah. So I feel more, I would say connected. The downside for me nowadays is my body doesn't enjoy, I'm driving by myself. So my body just doesn't enjoy a 5 hour car ride. Um, Especially coming back. Yeah, I was really fortunate because I drive the length of the Jersey Turnpike, and there was no delays until the standard delay at the George Washington Bridge, but it was the toll delay, so it was only about 10 minutes. You rarely do you ever drive right up to the toll booth at the George Washington Bridge. So this was probably backed up a half a mile, which compared to how it has been at other times in my life, there are times when it's 5, 7, 10 mile backup on the turnpike. And that's a nightmare, especially with its standard transmission. Because my left leg is 71 years old. It's like it
You,
doesn't want to keep hitting the clutch.
you drive a stick?
Yeah, I like it. If I ever buy another car, I won't buy another standard transmission just for that reason. But I mean, in the Northeast in the snow and stuff, a standard transmission is way better than an automatic. I can really manipulate the gears better, and it's fun. It's just a less boring drive with the standard transmission. But like I said, that was more true in my 30s and 40s and 50s than it is now.
Well, glad you had a great time, my
Yeah,
friend.
yeah. Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
would say that my gratitude moment is my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have sound mind. Another 24 hours to pursue my purpose in life. I'm grateful for the challenges and problems of my life because through those solutions come wisdom. And thinking along those lines, I came up with a framework that I use now, and I've learned that the bigger the problem, the bigger the solution. The bigger the solution, the bigger the lesson. The bigger the lesson, the greater wisdom. The greater wisdom, the greater transformation. So, in that context, that's what keeps me focused on understanding that challenges and problems are just a natural part of life, and it's definitely not just happening to me, and that it's actually happening for me. And just that shift in thinking has always recently put me in an alignment and vibrating on a frequency that connects with other people who are. And so that's something I'm grateful for as well. Then finally, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on this show with you and not have any technical issues. We've gotten those solved. We've had our uh, times where we've had technical issues. So I've learned to be grateful when we just get on and not have anything not connect, sound, video, internet. So all those things I'm grateful for.
Yeah, beautiful.
And with that being said, then we got our gratitude and our energy levels out of the way. We're going to be tuned in for an excellent show. So, what topic do you have for us today?
Yeah, so today we're going to address a topic that we've referred to in the past, but haven't actually taken a specific singular deep dive into, and that's the relationship between Project 2025, which you and I have been speaking about over the last year and a half, probably before even a lot of the mainstream news organizations were speaking about it. Not that we're special or smart or anything, but it was out there and it was available to the public. But the relationship between Project 2025, which is a conservative document trying to change the federal government of the United States, and its direct relationship to many of the executive orders passed by the current president of the United States, who claimed while he was running that he had never heard of Project 2025 and didn't know what it was, which was just, an outright lie, basically, which is no surprise. So I want to zero in on one particular element of Project 2025 and one particular executive order, that was passed on January 20th. So it was ready to go on Inauguration Day. And I'm going to just see if I can share my screen here for a second so I can show you some of what I'm going to be talking about. If the screen share doesn't work, let me know. So can you see that?
Yes.
It is there. Okay, so basically the title of the executive order is, quote, ending the weaponization of the federal government, end quote. It's executive order number 14147. It was signed on camera by Donald Trump on January 20th, 2025. So what I want to do before we go into the executive order, before I go into Project 2025, is just share the first two paragraphs of the executive order. And here's what it says, and it's worth listening to as well as seeing. The purpose of this executive order, again, the title of which is Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. The American people have witnessed the previous administration, so the Biden administration, engage in a systematic campaign against its perceived political opponents, weaponizing the legal force of numerous federal law enforcement agencies and the intelligence community against those perceived political opponents in the form of investigations, prosecutions, civil enforcement actions, and other related actions. These actions appear oriented more toward inflicting political pain than toward pursuing actual justice or legitimate governmental objectives. Many of these activities appear to be inconsistent with the Constitution and or the laws of the United States, including those activities directed at parents protesting at school board meetings, Americans who spoke out against the previous administration's actions, and other Americans who were simply exercising constitutionally protected rights. I'm not going to read the whole rest of it, but the next paragraph begins, the prior administration and allies throughout the country engage in an unprecedented third world weaponization of prosecutorial power to upend the democratic process. And it goes on and on and on from there. So I'm going to just stop sharing there for a moment. I think I've done that. And what's striking about that language, and again, that's the language from an executive order signed by Donald Trump on the inauguration of his presidency the second time around. Now, what they're describing is basically Trump was prosecuted for crimes he was indicted for. Everything from inciting an insurrection against the government, trying to overthrow the election, for tax fraud in New York, for refusing to give back classified documents, lying that he had them. So he was actually indicted for different things that he actually did. And they were criticizing the Biden administration for doing that to him. And they're saying they want to stop the weaponization of the federal government. And all they've done since they've been in office is weaponize the federal government, especially the Department of Justice, against people and organizations that Trump, as an individual, perceives as his enemies. So they've weaponized the United States federal government against major universities, against major law firms, against large media companies, against individual people like John Bolton, who served in Trump's first term. So that executive order, and we're going to see that the language comes right out of Project 2025, but that executive order is in fact a lie, and it's a blueprint for what the Trump administration is actually doing itself. They have, for the last 8 months now, they've weaponized the federal government against people that Donald Trump perceives as his personal or political enemies. So that's what the discussion we want to take a deeper dive into. That's the basic formatting of it. I'll get to Project 2025 in just a moment, but I want to just pause there because effectively they're saying they're going to end the weaponization of the federal government by, in fact, weaponizing the federal government. And that's pretty much an irrefutable fact. If you're paying attention and you're more or less an honest human being, you can see it. I mean, it's been, weaponized every day. There's a new attack being made by this administration against somebody, and it includes cities and democratic states. Putting in the National Guard and sending in ICE and threatening to go to war against the city of Chicago. So the very thing they say that they're trying to stop, they're doing at a level that's never been done before in the United States. So I'll pause there.
Well, gratitude again for choosing timely and great topic. My initial thoughts are that's what Trump's playbook is to whatever he charges the other party with, he's doing. I mean,
Right.
from saying that, state rights, protecting states' rights, now he violates states' rights. Upholding the Constitution, then he clearly violates the Constitution with the, freedom of speech. And now that he wants to take away that, tell you what to say and what could be said, which is a part of the protest on some of the campus. So, it's just really interesting just watching how everything plays out, because Trump, which I don't know why his party doesn't care. Well, I get the ones who are in power who he's fulfilling their agenda. And so, but the folks who are his mega people, I just really don't understand how they're able to continue to ride with Trump and support Trump. I still see, even like I said, people who are friends of me on Facebook every now and then when I do log into Facebook, and these people are Trump supporters, don't know how I became friends with them, don't know them personally, but I have a black one and a white one who are friends of mine on Facebook, and they're always posting pro-Trump stuff. And for me, anybody who still wants to defend Trump at this level cannot be considered sane, or not consider someone not to even converse with. It's not worth, because you're not going to educate them. You're not going to give them facts, and that person's going, oh, I didn't realize that. You're absolutely right. I need to rethink my position. That opportunity of conversation is not possible. So it just, people who really believe that, and that's what Trump's power is, he's clearly created such a separation and created, and you always talk about this, the us against them approach, and my team, my tribe. So he has people who just, who've chosen that mega as their tribe, and they're just going to roll with him regardless of whatever Trump does, unless it's Epstein, but then they give him the grace to continue to not release those documents and things of that nature. So they don't give him a deadline. They just keep saying release. And he knows, again, Trump has yet to suffer any kind of consequence for his actions. I mean, yeah, he's been impeached twice, but what does that really mean at the end of the day? It goes in the historical record, but it still didn't stop him from running for president that second term. So it doesn't affect his bank account. He didn't go to jail for it, so I don't see what the impeachment means at all, other than just to put a little asterisk by his name to say he's been impeached, for whatever that's worth, But at the end of the day, the power he has, the ability he's able to move through with the support of the Supreme Court, them now recently allowing for him to totally racially profile in, California, so to me, it's like Trump has really shown that the country really is split when it comes down to white supremacy and white power, and consolidating that and keeping that intact. And folks who support that allow Trump to just do what he wants. And the executive order is a key indication of that. I can just create a actual legal document that is really just silly at its core, because I'm going to violate, because I'm actually creating documents that allow that I'm going to violate, and he's just doing that. And the whole thing about executive order, my final point is the fact that it's only, servable through his administration. if we are allowed to have elections again, and someone outside a mega Republican wins, they can just come in and do away with that executive order. So even the fanfare around it is just something to be in the news cycle and keep his name in the news cycle as much as possible. Keep you thinking about him. And they couldn't. I know Steve Bannon couldn't believe that he found someone who is tirelessly committed to doing that as Trump is. I don't think any other human would be willing, especially at his age, to just constantly be in the news cycle, constantly be the subject of jokes, criticism, um, lawsuits, what have you. I mean, what kind of life is that? Even if you do have all the money, and he's used to the money, it's like, how many gold toilets can you buy? I'm going to swap this gold toilet out for the advanced gold toilet. With this one has 24 karat gold. I want the one with, 44 karat gold, or, so it's just really that thinking to me is what I don't understand. So I'll conclude my first take on that.
Yeah, that last piece really resonates. And a few weeks ago, before I get onto the Project 2025 piece of this conversation, Anne Applebaum came out with a really concise way of describing what's important to Trump, besides money and power. But basically, he has no long-term, he's not a strategic person. He's an opportunist. And what he wants to do and be seen as is the person who wins every conversation, every interaction. He wants to be the guy who's perceived as being in control. So he wants to try to embarrass Zelensky in their first meeting in the White House. He wants to show that he's on a par with Putin, inviting a dictatorship and international war criminal, gives him the red carpet and a flyover up in Alaska. He wants to be seen as an equal to him, and he's nowhere near an equal. As we've said before on Russian television, they refer to Trump as Putin's little puppet, Putin's little doll in Russian television. And the only place on the planet where people really don't recognize Trump for who he is and what he is in about half of the United States. Europeans know what he is. The Canadians know. People in South America know. It's just Americans who don't see it. So, yeah, and he's at 79 years old. He keeps doing this, but he's fading and fading further from, he can still do his social media tweets and messages, but he's supposed to be the president of the United States, and he's basically governing by social media messages. But anyway, that aside, I just want to point now to, the reality of the Project 2025 presence and, in fact, foundation in this particular executive order around ending the weaponization of the federal government. And I don't know if it's useful. I put the document that I'm going to share. I just put the link to that in private chat there. If you don't need to look at it, but it's there if you want to look at it. That's my source for this. Let me just bring this up again. So, this particular page has I think 3 paragraphs from Project 2025. And the first one is from page 135. It was written by Ken Cuccinelli, who's one of the many authors of Project 2025. And Cuccinelli was a deputy director of Homeland Security during Trump's first term, as many of the writers of Project 2025 did serve in Trump's first term. So this is the paragraph in Project 2025, quoted. Unfortunately for our nation, the federal government's newest department, and that's Homeland Security he's referring to, the newest department became like every other federal agency, bloated, bureaucratic, and expensive. It also lost sight of its mission priorities. DHS has also suffered from the left's wokeness and weaponization against Americans whom the left perceives as its political opponents. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is a DHS component that the left has weaponized to censor speech and affect elections at the expense of securing the cyber domain and critical infrastructure, which are threatened daily. Now, just a quick comment on that. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency was the agency led by Christopher Krebs, a Trump appointee, that came out and said that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history. So again, it's an agency that's part of Homeland Security, which is a department created by the George W. Bush administration, and which said that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history. And Cuccinelli is saying that it's too woke and it's weaponized against Americans that the left perceives as political opponents. Now, I'm not saying that the left is completely innocent, but this language is the exact language that appears in the executive order that I just read. And here's just one more example, written without a specific attribution. So it's probably written by the editors of Project 2025. The Department of Justice's unprecedented politicization and weaponization under Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland, resulting in, quote, politically motivated and viewpoint-based prosecutions of political enemies and indifference to the crimes of political allies, has made the department a threat to the republic. That's a quote. So that's the very thing that the Trump administration is doing. So, as you said, and this is, the basis of our conversations for over 3 years now, is that Trump is the embodiment of American shadow, and that if you hear him criticize anyone or accuse anyone of anything, it's something he's done, generally speaking. He projects his own crimes and misdemeanors onto other people. And this is a perfect example. Further in that document, there's actually a screen share or a snapshot of his Truth Social account where he actually said, I've never heard of Project 2025. I don't know what it is. I might agree with it or disagree with it, but I don't know anything about it, which again was a blatant, outright lie. So I'll just stop there, because my sense is that how we're really suffering, and you addressed this really clearly in your first comment, with somebody who's really operating within the MAGA community. And I'm going to just separate the senators and people in the House of Representatives and the people in his administration for a second, because they're not stupid people, right? They're either, afraid of him, or they're complicit because they believe in what he's doing. But for many other Americans, and I'm going to use a word that I mean not as an insult, it's as a descriptor, many of them are ignorant of the Constitution, of Project 2025, and of the language of the executive orders, and of what's really happening in the country. They're literally not informed. They do not know what's happening, especially if they're fortunate enough to be among the population that the Trump administration hasn't hurt yet. I mean, where I'm sitting right now, I'm not directly affected by any of these executive orders yet, other than with higher prices for certain things that I buy. But my stepson, who was born to two Dominican parents, who has, dark brown skin, light brown skin, I should say, medium brown skin, and dreadlocks, and lives in New Haven, he's a prime target because the Supreme Court has allowed the president and ICE to racially profile people who look like or work in jobs or speak in a way that suggests they could be illegal. Now, my stepson is bilingual and he speaks English, was his primary language growing up, and he's 36 years old. But many Americans haven't been adversely affected yet, and they don't think it matters. And that, for me, is simple ignorance. Again, and that's not calling somebody stupid or insulting them. There are many things about which I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant about the Hindu religion. I'm ignorant about the underlying basics of nuclear physics. I'm ignorant about um, most brain science. I know a little bit about it as a layperson. So ignorance, there's nothing wrong with it because our body of knowledge as humans is so vast now. Um, but a lot of Americans who support what Donald Trump is doing do so from a standpoint of ignorance, not from a standpoint of being informed.
Well, I know you kind of didn't want to use stupid, but again, going by Carlos Sapola, who coined or wrote a book talking about the 5 levels of stupidity. Again, when he says stupid, he doesn't define stupid as a mere lack of intelligence or knowledge. Rather, it's categorized by actions that cause harm to others or a group of people without providing any benefit or potentially causing harm to the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that context, I look at them as being stupid by that definition he's giving, not saying they're a lack of any kind of intelligence to their nature. And so, because again, they're doing just that, and he wrote this back in 1929 of people who are willing to say, as long as my enemy doesn't win, I'm willing to take a loss as well. And that to me is the true definition of stupid. And that's what we have right now. People who stupidly believe that and fall in line with the fact that they think that Trump is actually winning for them. And they defend him on Facebook like he's doing something that benefits them. Like their lives are actually better because they're seeing ice raids and going to, the Hyundai factory and just start trying to, arrest over 300 people from the Hyundai factory and destroy relationships with Korea based off that, and all the I call just totally evil and unkind things that his administration does. Like his administration just wakes up saying, how can we be evil today? What can we do that can be unkind? And that's what we want to do. I mean, I made a joke to a friend of mine, several friends of mine, just to test people's theory. I made something completely up and just wanted to see what they would believe, you know, and no one challenged me on it because they believed Trump would do it. And what I said was, I said, Trump just came out with another new executive order and basically says that um, he's removing African American from all federal documents because that's too woke. So black people can either just choose between white or non-white. And they was like, really? He's done that, huh? No one really, no, you're kidding. And no one even came back with that kind of response because they believe that's something he would do. And I'm sure he would do it if he had enough time to get around to it because his thing is, and he's convinced his stupid base to use the word woke and left as insults. Wokeism.
Hmm.
Term Trump even came up with another term he used, wokey. So that sounds very wokey. So now he's giving it the adjective, right? He's just creating words to give his base something to believe in and something to use and something they can feel better about, even though again it doesn't benefit their lives at all. It doesn't benefit your life. As a matter of fact, it hurts your life because people don't realize just how much immigrants, um, as far as whether they're illegal or not, the fact that they're here in this country, how they're spending money, how the jobs they work in, all that, how that's making the country better and creating cash flow economics that are now being ripped out as we send them out of the country. And they're not even thinking about things on a simple level, like folks who don't care about the immigrant person, don't care about his humanity or her humanity, but they care about animals. You're not thinking about the fact that these families own dogs. And so when you snatch these people out, can you at least care about the dogs? Who's caring for the dog?
Hmm.
What is that doing to the neighborhood when that house now becomes vacant? All these things that are not being considered because again, this is what I'm saying. They fit that true definition of stupid. Not that they lack intelligence, but just the fact that um, you know, student a stupid person is more dangerous than anybody else because a stupid person would just follow suit and without thinking. And that's what we see now. And that's what Trump wants. His administration wants. Trump even said it several times throughout his campaign. Um, I think the first time, I think he might even said it the second time. I love my stupid people. I love my low intelligent people. That's what he said, as a matter of fact. Excuse me, I didn't realize my phone was going off. I had my phone on silent. Sorry about that. So he even said, I love the lower intelligent, or the, he says something along those lines. And see, so one thing about Trump is that he definitely kind of lets you know what he's thinking and what he's doing out loud. He doesn't, he's learned that there's no consequence. I can say it. Like he, first term when he's running for office, I can shoot someone on, and in the heart of what, Manhattan, and not, and still get elected president, not let alone be arrested for that.
Right.
So finally, I just want to say to that point, and I want to wrap on this, is that, Sapola talks about dividing people into 4 categories. And I just want to go to, and I mentioned this before, but to your point where we are right now, and his base who follow this blindly, fit into, this his description describes everybody, but basically he says, here's the 4 categories that he divides people into. Intelligent, and these are people who benefit both themselves and others. That's what he defines as intelligence, not IQ. But he's defining people who look for mutual benefit for themselves and others. He considers those people to be intelligent. Helpless, harm themselves while trying to help others. So those are people who, again, a helpless person, someone who will harm themselves while trying to help others. Then you have bandits, the 3rd category. And these are people who benefit themselves by harming others. So again, a bandit is somebody who just robbed from you, and as long as he benefit, they justify it. And then finally, again, stupid people is the 4th category, harm both themselves and others. And that's what he talks about. And that's what I look at, and just want to make sure that people understand there are definitions, there are analysis, there's of what's going on and how these people are behaving. And I just think that we need to be much more deliberate and intentional about using language now to call people out. And just like they branded woke as a bad thing, which makes no sense, they've made left a bad thing. Again, see, this is what the right does. The right doesn't care about trying to be politically correct. The right doesn't care about critical thinking. If they like a word, if it fits their agenda, they're going to use it. And then they're going to brand it, and then it becomes a part of zeitgeist as far as how they think and speak.
Yeah. Amen. It almost comes down to the reality of, to what extent does and I try to avoid the labels and generalizations, but it's hard to have, to speak in conversation occasionally without them. But just to say that the party in power right now doesn't have any respect for the rules, especially the rule of law. And to what extent does the party that's not in power, the opposition party, to what extent do they have to match that lack of care about rules and law in order to compete, in order to save democracy, is another way to put it. In one of the developmental models, where basically you have a developmental worldview that believes might makes right, and the only way you can confront that people with that worldview is with might. You can't shame them, you can't convince them, you can't fool them, because they'll just run over you. So the classic example of it is, people ask, why couldn't we deal with, Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein in Iraq the way that Gandhi dealt with Great Britain in India, and the way that Dr. King dealt with racism in America. And the difference was that Americans and Brits could be shamed. They were mature enough as a culture, not perfect, but they could be shamed. And Osama bin Laden and even Vladimir Putin now, and Saddam Hussein, you couldn't, shame wasn't the weapon that would work against them. They would just laugh at you. Like if you told them how despicable they were, they'd just drop another bomb or do whatever they're going to do. So they're, understanding this worldview, Trump can't be shamed. You can't shame him. That he's lived a life of doing things where people mock him and everything. It doesn't matter. Someone like J.D. Vance, who may be in many ways more dangerous, might be able to be shamed because he wasn't given everything at birth. As much as I hate to say it, he earns some of what he has. But Trump can't be shamed. And maybe Vance can't either. I don't really know that. But you've got to meet, strength with strength. And the opposition party right now, except for certain people, isn't doing that yet.
Well, yeah. And I want to, I think we take time for our sponsor breaking up and pick up our conversation on the other side.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that right now. Take a moment for our sponsor.
The playbook for growing a local business online is simple. Capture new leads, conversationally convert those leads into sales, turn those customers into positive reviews, and then reactivate those customers into repeat buyers. And that's exactly what our platform does. In order to consistently generate new leads, you first need to be found. The quickest way to get search engines like Google to put your business at the top of search results is by having a steady flow of positive reviews. With our platform, you can show up in search and stand apart from your local competition by easily collecting new customer reviews through text. But getting found is only the beginning. Most consumers choose the first business that responds to them. So unless you start conversations with potential customers almost instantly, they'll go somewhere else. That's why we make starting conversations with website visitors as easy as clicking a button, connecting you instantly through text message so the conversation doesn't end when they leave your website. And we bring all your leads, no matter where they come from, into a single conversation stream that supports text, email, video messaging, Google Business Chats, and even Facebook and Instagram DMs, so you can respond faster and more efficiently than ever. When it comes to turning all those conversations into customers, we make collecting payments just another convenient part of the combo, so you get paid faster no matter how they prefer to pay. Next, you'll want to turn your new customers into happy reviews, which is a snap with our new review request quick actions. The more conversations and customers you generate, the easier it becomes to drive repeat business. We make reactivating contacts into customers as easy as, yup, you guessed it, the push of a button. With bulk actions, you can send out text and email campaigns to generate new sales whenever you have a new update, promotion, or story to tell. We make modern online marketing simple. Let's start growing your business today.
And we're back. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. And again, I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. And we're back from our sponsored break. And I just want to add this to our discussion as we're discussing Trump's executive order for weaponizing the government, against weaponizing the government, I would say, but it was for weaponizing the government because that's basically what he's doing at every level. What's going to be interesting, like I said, for me is what is going to bring Trump down, because something brings every human down. It doesn't matter what it is. Will it be Epstein? Will his base detest for pedophiles outweigh their racist mentality? That's the question. That's what it comes down to. Because Trump obviously was with Epstein. We all know that. Everyone knows that. And his base, I never heard them debate that. They never talk about that from a context. I'm talking about not as the podcasters, but the regular folks who post on my social media anything that Trump does and supports what he does. What's interesting though, just a side note, or just a point that of interest is how you know, someone posted this on my website. I mean, on my page, a Facebook little graphic that showed the mayors of Chicago, Baltimore, and um, I forgot it was the third mayor, but I forgot maybe California, Gavin Newsom, and they all were saying, "Don't mess with my crime in my state. Let my crime be." That's what the caption says. As Trump sitting there looking like Superman, saying he's going to come in and solve these issues, and even that's just a way of just dominating the news cycle, because again, he knows that the Supreme Court's not going to do anything against him. The federal courts may say it's illegal, but there's no consequence with it illegal. They're not going to come and arrest him. There's no federal troops that's going to come put him in jail. And so he can just do what he wants. And now the governors and local states may not, allow certain National Guards to hit their streets. And we are going to be interested to see what the governors actually do. I know the governor of Maryland talks a big game, but let's see what he actually does when Trump sends troops here. Now, my only point I want to make is what's interesting to me is that I often said that, and again, this is a question for the Black community, because a lot of these, cities where they say the crime is there are in the Black community. And again, I'm not saying it's only in the Black communities. We know that a lot of red states have crime, and we know all that. So that's not what I'm going with this. But I do know for a fact that, again, that's that what else-ism. And folks, we use the left uses the what else-ism in that context. But the bottom line is there crime in Baltimore? Absolutely. Anytime you have a city that has over 300 murders per year, and the average is that, and the best thing you can hope for is a politician that can run an office and then say that they believe some policy, some law they enacted dropped it from 325 down to 310. And so now I can say had a 15% in crime reduction. So that justifies them getting reelected because, but not looking at the fact that still over 300 people were killed, and that shouldn't be allowed. That shouldn't stand. So my only question I want to wrap up with is, yeah, it's to send federal troops into the United States cities is wrong. That's not how you want to use the military. I get that. I get the National Guard is not trained to go into the military. Go into cities and fight crime and deal with those things. All that I understand, but nothing else was going to be done for them on that end. That's the point. If you live in those cities, you can feel comfortable and rest assured that at least 300 people are going to die in those cities every year. And there was nothing going to be done about that. Nothing different going to be done about that. So at least in that context, Trump is doing something. Will people be racially profiled? Will people's rights be trampled on? Absolutely. But at what, and this is the question I end with, is what rights are you willing to give up in order for being more safe? If I can walk down my streets and have elderly people walk to these corner stores and buy their groceries or do whatever they want to do in their lives and not be assaulted, not be robbed, not have to worry about any kind of physical violence happening to them, if that gives them a safer street, then maybe that's not such a bad thing. It's cons to everything and there's trade-offs to everything. But safety, I guarantee people whose children don't die this year won't argue with the fact that if we get up below 300 murders in Baltimore, 100 murders for the first time, and I don't know when, if that happens as a result of him sending troops in, then maybe that's not such a bad thing. I just wanted to throw that little note in as a point of reference.
Yeah. Two things come up for me around that, though. The FBI statistics, and I don't know how reliable they're going to be moving forward because Kash Patel is a Trump flunky. But the FBI statistics through 2024 make it really clear that the states with the most per capita crime, I think the top 20 states per capita with crime, they're red states. And in terms of specifics of murder, of violent crime, the majority of them, again, are red states. So your point is well taken. And I would add that Trump isn't going in trying to resolve crime in Baltimore or Chicago or Los Angeles. He's going in order to mess with democratic cities. Because if he really wanted to solve crime, he'd have to take a really close look at those states where per capita crime, in places like Alabama, I forget which ones they are, but Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana come to mind.
Tennessee as well.
Yeah. So he's really not interested in making America safer. He's interested in putting the federal government into cities and states that have strong democratic populations. And the long game, I believe, is to make sure there are federal troops available around election time, which will intimidate and harass and scare some voters, especially voters who think they might be arrested or something for some reason. I don't know the details, but I agree with you. But the second point is, if you look internationally, there's evidence that we do not have to give up freedom for safety. In other words, there are lots of countries where people are actually freer than we are in this country, and they're a lot safer as well. In fact, Timothy Snyder, in his book on freedom, makes the point that it's mythical to think the only way I can be safe is to give up some more of my freedoms. And he gives examples of that, which I'm not articulate enough. But that's an easy sell to people, as you said. If I'm living in a high crime area and they say, well, if we put these National Guard troops in their full uniforms with their automatic weapons on every street corner, and they're only going to appear in the inner city, they're not going to be, they're not going to be in Riverdale. They'll be in the South Bronx in the New York area. That's what I'm familiar with. They're not going to be in Greenwich, Connecticut. They're going to be in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So basically, it's again taking away rights of poor, disenfranchised people in order to keep them safe, rather than doing a good job providing housing, stopping the redlining, taking better care of those who, by no fault of their own, need help. And that's the American story for 200 some odd years, where, FDR with the New Deal, Johnson with the Great Society, the country will be much better if those who have more, and it's not socialism, it's helping people who need help. And that gets labeled socialism as a bad thing, and we're a democracy and capitalists, and people get all scared about it. Will people take advantage occasionally of Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security or disability? Probably. But do the wealthy take advantage of the laws as they are? Take Trump as an example. Take Musk as an example. Take Epstein as an example. Take Jamie Dimon as an example. They all do it. And we're worried about the outside chance that there might be, to use Ronald Reagan's discriminatory language, a welfare queen, as though everybody who was getting food stamps was driving a Cadillac in New York City, which was a lie. So I don't believe that we have to give up freedom in order to be safe, at least not in the long term.
I agree, not in the long term,
Yeah.
But I do think that something needs to be done in these cities, because, like I said, it's back and forth as a governor. And I agree with you. First of all, let me be clear. I agree with you 100%. Trump doesn't care about making the city safe at all. I get that, and I'm not advocating that he is. No more than he cares about Jewish students on campuses being discriminated against.
Right.
He doesn't care about that at all. That's a political stunt, something he can use to say, I want to get these people out of the country, so if I can use that, then I will. So, like you said, he has some agenda for putting federal troops. It's for control. It's for power. It's for showing that, I can have an army that's loyal to me in every city in most of the blue states that will act when I need them to act. So that's really the reason he's doing that. Now, if it reduces crime in the short term, see, what I'm saying is, my only argument is the Democratic governors don't have a counter to that other than leave my crime alone. It's not like okay, well, yeah, let's not do Trump's thing, but here's what I'm going to do. That's not there's no alternative. It's either you suffer or you suffer.
Right.
That's our alternative for the people who live in that community. There's no other options for them. That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. I agree with you there for sure.
and that's what I kind of wish the Democratic politicians would actually get people riled up if they begin to do something radical. That's my point. They want to maintain the status quo, but think people are going to be so pissed off at Trump that drives them to the polls, and it won't. What was going to drive people to the polls to vote Trump out is that you got to give people something to be excited about, as opposed to we're just not Trump. We're just not that evil. We're just not going to do those things. But it's like, what are you going to do? And that's what they need to begin to think about and operate differently, because what Trump is showing is that his base wants action. They want to see something different. He gives them something different. Again, doesn't benefit them, but for the optics, it looks good.
Right.
The Democrats are not coming up with anything that's, come up with, say, we're going to do healthcare for all, and we're going to stand on that. Something that's going to give people a significant change they can be excited about. So I know we're getting to the top of the hour, so that was just my last little rant before we get ready to wrap things up. But you want to give us some closure and some directions on how we can begin a more full human and stay on this path?
Yeah, I think what we're speaking about today with this weaponization of the government and a real danger that we currently face now. What we're seeing doesn't look like authoritarianism. Right now, we have authoritarianism in this country because there is not a democratic process that's working. There is some pushback. The lower courts are trying, but we're seeing authoritarian tactics. And one of the most dangerous things is that people think, okay, there's no point in voting anymore. And that's the key. If you don't think it's important to vote anymore, authoritarianism wins out. So I would recommend that I'm going to mention a few organizations and names that people can check out. So Joyce Vance, who's a former U.S. attorney, she's down in Alabama. She has a daily Substack newsletter called Civil Discourse. And she writes about all of the legal stuff going on in the Trump administration. She makes sense of it for lay people. And not just about voting, but also including voting. That's one. Heather Cox Richardson, who's a historian, writes a daily newsletter that puts the goings on in the country right now in a historical perspective. So she writes as a historian as opposed to a legal expert. So those two are really important places to look. There are two places specifically for voting rights. One is the Brennan Center. You just search for Brennan Center. They have a website and they have a Substack appearance as well. And then there's the Democracy Docket, which is founded by a guy named Mark Elias, Elias. And their primary focus is on they go to court and they challenge the government on voting rights. So that's another one, Democracy Docket. And then the last one, arguably the rather young grandfather of the history of voting rights in this country, is a journalist named Ari, A-R-I, Berman, B-E-R-M-A-N. And his books, Give Us the Ballot, which was like 2015 or 2015. And then his 2024 book, Minority Rule, The Right-Wing Attack on the Rule of the People and the Fight to Resist It. Those are great sources to learn about the ongoing fights to make sure that every American gets to vote, which, like the Voting Rights Act of 65 was a big step, but the Supreme Court took away some of the elements of that under John Roberts in 2013 in Shelby County versus Holder. So Joyce Vance, Heather Cox Richardson, the Brennan Center, Democracy Docket, and then Ari Berman's work. And he's actually the voting correspondent for Mother Jones magazine. All of those are great sources to learn about the legal goings on, and especially around voting, because if we lose faith in elections, the democracy effectively will end. there haven't been illegal elections in this country. We have a remarkable history of fair elections in this country. And Trump planted the seed about rigged elections beginning back in 2012 before he ever even ran for anything. There's a whole history of his statements. Don't trust what he says.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we reached the last part of our show, which we go into giving examples of people who, throughout history or currently, who we believe are exhibiting the characteristics and behaviors of being fully human. And so we want to give people our flowers and show folks that what we're talking about is possible, has been done, is being done, and it's not something that is just some pie in the sky that we all dream and hope for better days. So with that being said, I'm going to choose my person. It's going to be Napoleon Hill. I may have said his name before. I'm sure I have. I'd be shocked if I hadn't after all this time. But I definitely want to give Napoleon Hill his flowers. He was an American self-help author, best known for his books Think and Grow Rich and 17 Principles of Law of Success. He was all about understanding mental growth, think and grow rich. Again, being operative, think and grow rich. He was heavily influenced by people like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, other great leaders in America that helped him create the book after doing 30 years of research. So with that being said, I quickly want to just talk about his 6 pillars, or the 6 pillars that I've created that I feel that he exemplifies and why I chose them. Number 1, identity, definitive purpose, which is what I believe my identity is. He was advocate for helping me determine that and put me on that path. Number 2, growth mindset. He's definitely persistent, personal initiative, always wanted to learn from adversity, advocated growing, learning. Number 3, higher purpose and service. He was all about giving back, serving the community, creating value, building a mastermind alliance, going the extra mile. 4, core principles. He was about self-discipline, accurate thinking, and a core person behind the principles thinking in that context. 5, grateful spirit. He definitely had a positive mental attitude. His enthusiasm was something that was addictive and attractive to people. And then finally, self-awareness. Number 6, he called accurate thinking. He was definitely someone who was careful about what he did and his impact on the greater society and his legacy. So Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, great. I have read 2 of his books. I mean, a long time ago, but great choice. So I'm going to mention one of the people I just mentioned in terms of steps people can take, and that's Ari Berman. And the 2015 book, just to show you, he has this dedication as an investigative journalist. I think of him as a historian as well. So his 2015 book, I just lost the title of it. I'll say it out loud here again. Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America. So that was written, years before Trump became president. So it's not about Trump. It's about the fact that not everyone has been allowed to vote in this country since its inception. And we've gone 2 steps forward, 1 step back many times in this country. So Berman is really committed to exposing the problems with race, gender, wealth, et cetera, around, one of the 2 underlying foundations for American democracy, free and fair elections and the rule of law. They're not the only 2, but those are 2 of the foundational elements. So Ari Berman, whom I don't know, he could be, he might not be a nice person. I don't know. But in terms of where he's put his attention for decades now, he has shown, for me, a really fully human approach to caring about democracy in this country, with his zeroing in on the right to vote for all Americans.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing. And we reached the end of our show. Again, we want to thank our listening audience for tuning in today. Whether you're watching live or you're watching a replay of the show, we appreciate it as we continue to look ways that we can continue to explore how to be more fully human and highlight folks who are doing that, and hopefully turn this into a movement that people want to be a part of and start identifying as human beings and we get away from all the other identities that divide us, but don't benefit us along the way. So with that being said, Reggie, again, thank you for choosing another topic, for being present, for showing up. And until next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, let's all continue to look for ways to be more fully human. Thank you.